So it's the week of year in review articles and segments on TV and online streaming. I don't know how much you indulge in top 10 lists and retrospectives and other looking back at the year that is concluded. But it is a time of taking stock, a time of looking forward. And this morning, as we find ourselves on the precipice of another year, I wanted to look ahead. I thought about doing a retrospective. I thought about looking back at the seminal, pivotal events in the life of St. Stephen's, and that may be a good idea for a future year, but I'm thinking forward to 2024, thinking forward and always trying to think about the ways that our faith and our tradition and the scriptures that have been given to us as a guide and a resource intersect with the events of our lives. So we don't know what is going to happen, and some of those articles in the same vein as the retrospectives are also looking forward and speculating about what might artificial intelligence bring for us in 2024, and what might come in an election year, and what might come in events around global relations. And one of the things that I'm thinking about in light of 2024 being an election year is how we will have ample opportunities to marinate in negativity and criticism. If there's any prediction that can be made with near perfect certainty, it's that you will hear and you will be invited to participate in, lest we kind of occupy this set-aside place and go, that's for other people who do that negative, nasty stuff. You will be invited to participate in attacks on other people, to chime in and amplify messages that seek to assassinate characters and denigrate individuals. And one of the excuses that will get made is, oh, those are just politicians. That's what they sign up for. They're not real people. They're not human beings. They're this kind of alien alter breed of life in this world that deserves all the scorn that anybody can and chooses to heap upon them. And so the thing that I want to offer you this morning is the option to take a pass. Is the option when you are presented with opportunities to jump into the fray. Because it's a fun sport, right? Everybody's doing it. And it's so easy. Those things are just so quick on the tongue when there is something egregious that is clearly afoot, to jump in, to pile on, to ride the bandwagon with everybody else, because that is becoming an American national sport along with the NFL and the NBA. An American national pastime to just shoot the flamethrower. So I want to invite you this year, and I promise there will be a faith tie-in so that this is not just Garrett's rant about American political life, but I want to invite you to consider taking a pass, thinking about your agency in the public discourse and in private conversations and in online forums, and thinking, what do I want my voice to contribute to this conversation? And here's the faith tie-in. I'm thinking, do we have any example in our scriptural tradition, in the life of the one whose entrance into the world we have just celebrated at Christmas, of this exact thing? Jesus could be really sharp for those who prefer to think of gentle Jesus, meek and mild, the innocent baby lying in a manger, the forgiving, grace-filled Jesus. Don't forget the time in which he entered into the temple and in a seeming rage overturned tables of the money changers and the other vendors and sellers of animals and other items for ritual sacrifice. He was not shy about confronting that which was a detriment to right relationship with God. But the consideration is not, do I be angry or do I be graceful? But rather, to what end? What is the purpose? What am I trying to accomplish? What do I want to contribute out of the opportunity and the agency of my life and my voice? And in many instances, the better course is to take a pass. So Jesus, at the end of his life, that we every year recall and recount during Holy Week, found himself on the precipice of his own arrest. And you will remember that there were people sent by the high priest. They were called the temple police. They were basically the religious enforcers of the day. They were sent in order to make sure that no rabble-rousers like some itinerant rabbi from the countryside would challenge the power structure and the authority of the temple in Jerusalem. And they heard that this guy Jesus was attracting a large following, and they needed to get rid of him. That story is familiar to you. We know it. And they sent out police, and the police came with weapons, and they confronted Jesus and his small group of followers. And one of his most zealous defenders took his sword, and the gospel narrates, cut off the ear of one of those who had come to arrest Jesus. Now, in our present sensibility, that's more than those are fighting words, and they need to be countered with a vigorous and a sharp rebuttal. That's actual war. And what do we do when war is declared upon us? We punch back hard. You don't let things go in which someone has injured you or attacked you or your own group. You make them pay. And out of that kind of eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth comes the increasing cycles of vitriol that we're really into. And the question is, does anybody have the courage to take a pass? That's exactly what Jesus did. He said to Peter, put your sword away. We don't do that. And we're not gonna do that. And that is not what we stand for in this world. Now, if there was ever a justifiable reason for somebody to engage violence to violence, that would seem to have been the one. And the consequences were literally life and death. You know what happened to him after that. And yet Jesus said to Peter, put your sword away. We don't do that. And I'm sure there were vigorous arguments afterwards. Can you imagine the reflection of the rest of the disciples after that had happened? There's similar conversations as we have today, although the stakes in most cases are much lower than life and death. We really should have fought back harder on that battle, because look at the gains that those people now made. We're at a disadvantage. We didn't vigorously enough stick up for ourselves. That had to have been the same conversation that took place among the disciples. If we had fought them, Jesus wouldn't be in custody of the Romans right now. We could have saved him. We could have gotten away. None of this would have had to happen. Why didn't we fight harder? Jesus said, put your sword away. We're not going to do that. And so in 2024, there are going to be ample opportunities, and we are going to be bathed in a climate of negativity and of turning against one another. And even in this last election cycle here in Armonk, some of the things that we have observed on a larger scale have visited our own community. in elections for town board. And things were said, and counter things were said, and people were accused, and people were disparaged. And there's enough blame to go around if we want to play blame and retribution. But there is a different way. And the way is to take a pass. Not to be passive, not to be a doormat, but to consider before we engage in the cycles of escalating negativity, what is it that I want my voice and my presence in this situation to accomplish? And so Jesus gives us an example that is a hard example to follow. But the life of faith is that, more times than we would prefer, of doing the hard right over the easy wrong because of the relief and the gotcha that feels so good in the moment. In this year to come, we are reminded that we are the people of light, that we have choices to make based upon the one who is our example to follow. And it's not a churchy thing. It's not a practice on Sunday morning thing, as we know intellectually, but sometimes it's hard for us to practice and to carry out on Tuesday at 5 p.m. It's a throughout our life thing. And the consequences of marinating in an environment where there is increasing negativity and increasing polarization and increasing tribalism and increasing suspicion of the other because they're always wrong and my side is always right, is that it compounds. And we complain about it, but we always complain about the other people that are doing it because it's their fault. And we always have the opportunity to take a pass. And so this year, as the calendar turns from 2023 to 2024, I invite you to carry with you the words of the opening collect that we heard this morning, to not let those fade into the background as some random prayer that happened on December 31st that is going to be replaced by all kinds of other things that are clamoring for our attention. But to know that you are an embodiment of this prayer, that when you have opportunities to engage in that which tears down, you can choose to take a pass. God, you have poured upon us the new light of your incarnate word. Grant that this light, enkindled in our hearts, may shine forth in our lives. Amen.